Hi, I'm Feroz Khan, and welcome to Drag and Drop Low Code Unplugged, the podcast where we explore the game-changing impact of low code in software development. Join me in insightful conversations with IT leaders and passionate low code enthusiasts who are at the forefront of this digital evolution. Together, we'll explore how early adoption of low code is giving businesses a competitive edge on a global scale. We'll discuss its impact on software development, dissect its role in transforming businesses, and uncover the ways in which it's reshaping career trajectories. So whether you're a seasoned IT professional or a curious enthusiast, be sure to tune in as we share success stories and unravel the mysteries of low code. Subscribe now and stay tuned for a front row seat to the revolution that's shaping the future of technology. So let's go. Hi Peter, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Feroz?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest. It's a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So it'd be good to, for those who don't know who you are, a bit about yourself, who's Peter?
So first and foremost, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a father. I'm a husband. Father of nine. Should bring that one up since we had a good talk about.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And I'm an application architect for the DoD contracting company. Basically aerospace, defense, that kind of stuff. Based here in the U.S.
Yeah. And, can we kind of, before we kind of get into kind of the low code side of things, can we start with kind of, where your interest in tech came, what you started with, what stack you started kind of developing with, and kind of how it's led to where you are today?
Oh, sure. I always find it a funny story. I've had a few different careers, and one of my first careers was I was a machinist. I did that for 8 years.
Okay.
Aerospace and defense,
Yeah.
oddly enough. And at about 8 year, I looked at the future, and it was okay. You're going to sit down and you're going to program. After you move off the machine, you're going to program. And what I said to myself was, that's boring. So I
Okay.
started going down a different career path, and then eventually I came back into it around 2006 and 2007. There was this technology called Microsoft SharePoint, and no one knew how to use it. And they said, "Hey, Peter, do you want to learn it? Be our administrator of it and CRM." So I started doing that. And so then eventually it just, hey, I need to learn more about, I wanted to just, I had a hunger for how do you make all these buttons show up on pages and do all these
Yeah.
fun things. I knew a developer, and she said, you get it, you need to go back to school. So I started going back to school part-time, and
Yeah.
that just, it continued the diving more deep, learn HTML and what does that do?
Yeah.
And then you continue down that path. I did SharePoint for a while. I finally sort of ditched Microsoft in about 2022 when we took over and
Yeah.
started using Mendix.
Yeah. And, in 2022, you obviously started using Mendix, but, low code's been around a lot longer than that. When did you first come across low code, or was that the first time?
Well, K2. So there's this product called
Yeah.
K2. It's
Heard
more
of
of
that.
a business process automation software. We had it, and I started trying to use it on a project in around 2015. And so it was pretty neat. It had a lot of promises, but still a little rough on the edges as far as how it worked out.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so then around I think it was 2021. The big deal was we were looking to automate our DevOps, and companies grow fast and slow, and they kind of stay in their position and how they are. And so we had a
Yeah.
bunch of technology stacks that were needed to get automated development pipelines. And so that's when I started looking into how do I, instead of, installing Jenkins and configuring it to do all these other things, how do I make it, is there a product out there that does all that for me? And that's when I
Yeah.
started looking into, okay, let's look at low code, use space, and who are the players out there, Forrest, Gartner, and all that to start to evaluate them.
Yeah. And what was your kind of first impressions of Mendix when you came across it? Did you, most people I speak to, they download free versions, play around with it. What was your kind of initial kind of process of evaluating?
Yeah, so I looked at Gartner had a really good list of here are how you evaluate things. And so I took that
Okay.
list and then I applied what we do at our company for things that we were looking for. Security being one of the biggest ones. How,
Mm.
how agile is it with security and what things do they have to offer? And one of the things that stood out for me for Mendix was the modularity that they have and the ability
Mm.
to, hey, if you want to take this application you built and deploy it to an AWS cloud, you can. If you want to deploy it to our cloud, you can. If you want to just run it on-prem on some machine that has no outside connection, you can. And I was like, that's great. I like that.
Did you have any doubts about, obviously, talent is, an issue, for kind of that skill set. Did you have any doubts on that side, or were you quite confident that, the technology itself will sell itself?
Oh yeah. I'm on the crazy side a little bit. I don't know that I've thought about that much. I mean, it
Yeah,
wasn't until I started getting into it and realized I'm making a career shift here. I don't see a
yeah,
lot of job offers out. SharePoint guys, they're looking for them all the
yeah.
time.
All the time, yeah,
Getting pinged all the time on LinkedIn. Hey, are
yeah,
you open? And
yeah,
then Mendix, I mean, a little bit now.
yeah,
But yeah, it was a little scary.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine. And when you kind of started using the platform, there's this thing, that low code platforms kind of put out that a senior developer from a traditional background can pick up a low code platform and become a senior very fast. So they're not starting again. What was your experience of learning the platform, but also how quick do you feel you were up to speed to that level where you could confidently be unassisted or kind of be guided?
So I had a little bit tougher job than the person coming in and hey, Mendix is already set up and we're running.
Yeah,
My job is
yeah,
to basically stand up the whole program and make the infrastructure
yeah,
run, make sure that part of the program. So, it was a lot more to take in to understand, oh, how are these inner workings and what is doing what and it's this new stuff. Just focused on the development portion. It did take me probably a couple months to feel comfortable with it,
mm,
in that there's some, low code has this kind of aura about it that it's easy, right? You just drag a
mm,
thing on the screen and all of a sudden
yeah.
everything
Start.
works. And
Yeah, yeah,
it's low code, not low logic, right? Is
yeah,
what I say. And so you still have to, oh, like, how come this page doesn't recognize I have this variable sending to it? And so it took me a
yeah.
minute to understand the Mendix way, I would say.
Uh-huh.
But then once you get there, you ramp right up into being the expert in Mendix. So you just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
flounder a while just figuring out how they want you to organize things, I should say.
Yeah. And comparing to kind of the traditional side of things when it comes to solution design, what differences, in approach did you have to take now kind of using Mendix versus what you were doing in the past?
Uh, I so when it comes to that piece, being able to take advantage of what I was saying earlier, their modularity of reusable code, making that easier available to other um, developers really makes it so now you're pushing people faster. Like, okay, we need to connect to Okta. Well, let me solve that problem once. Now you just install it into your app, and all you have to do is a couple configuration steps. So I laugh at some of the new developers that I'm, mentoring through the process, and they're like, "Wow, this is really difficult." And I say, "Yeah, imagine if you had to set up Okta all by yourself, and someone just handed it
Yeah.
to you, said, "Okay, now go figure out how to integrate single sign-on within the company." You don't have to do that. You submit a ticket, they give you some information, you enter it in, and you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about teams and the developers, that you've kind of worked with, what was the kind of reaction from them? We come across there's always a mixture of some are kind of not keen, and like you said, you were doing a career change pretty much, right? So they've kind of been told, we're adopting this platform, you either build on it or see you later, right? So what was the kind of reaction and feeling from other developers?
Yes. So the first, my closest team, they were okay and on board because we worked in jump technologies before.
Okay.
we went from just playing JavaScript to TypeScript, and let's try React, those kind of things. And so they were on board a little bit more. They were warmer to the idea, but they were like, "Hey, Peter, what is this crazy thing you're making us do? It's a career
Yeah.
change." But they were a little bit warmer. Some of the other groups were like, "What is this thing?" And then they start using. They'll say, "It was easier in this other kind of,
Yeah.
all I had to do was A, B, and C." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, but you don't have it automated." I just
Yeah.
you're still doing kind of the slower version of whatever we do today. So, once they
Yeah.
get on board and recognize the benefit, I mean, one of my selling points is I show them, okay, you know how long it takes to get a server in the company? It takes maybe a week or two, depending on what you're asking for. I said, you want a Mendix environment to deploy your code to and have users log into? I just need 10 minutes. And I have an
Yeah.
environment deployed. It's all yours. You can constantly deploy all you want in there. And that's all I need. I just need your information. What's the name of your app? What do you want the
Yeah.
URL to be? And have fun.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, talking about the platform, now that you've been using it for a few years, is there any certain features that you're quite impressed with, either that was already there from the beginning, or Mendix is forever kind of evolving, and there was a recent release just not long ago. Is there certain things that have come out in the time that you've been using it that you've thought for your own role that, oh, okay, this is going to help us accelerate or make things easier for me and my developers?
They, like you were saying, they're constant evolving in what they're
Yeah.
doing. And it's funny because I'll have an idea of, hey, I want to, at one point, so we're partially in the Mendix cloud in a sense, and mostly on AWS, and wanted to tap into some automation in how we looked at all the applications. And Mendix at the time didn't have a way to do that. And so when we kind of contacted them, they said, "Oh, we have this beta, a project API where you can do exactly what you're looking for." I'm like, "Okay, that's great." Oh, now we
Yeah.
need to look at, the packages, the version, and then next thing I know, I'm getting a contact. They have this really good program which is called Mendix Pioneers, and
Yes,
in
I've
there
seen that. Yeah.
yeah, you have the capability to start to talk to the product owner. I mean that's one of the things that's really been blowing me away about Mendix
Mm.
is that they're bought by Siemens. They're this kind of big company now, but they treat their customers like a little mom and pop shop. You have
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
personal engagement with them. They want to see your success. It's not like all about the dollar, and
Yeah.
that's what makes it, you know, continuing to evolve. They'll
Yeah.
listen to the feedback of their customers. I've had several calls where they're like, "How are you going to use this feature?" And
Yeah.
sure enough, they implement my suggestions, which
Yeah.
is really nice.
Yeah. That's nice. A bit like a family-run kind of business,
Yes.
right? Where there's kind of above and beyond to make sure the customer kind of is always happy and kind of staying with you, not
Yes.
looking elsewhere.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. We have a good
And
customer. A bird in the hand is
yeah,
better than two in the bush, right?
exactly, exactly right. And you spoke about you've mentioned things that and then they've kind of had it kind of for you to work with. No technology is perfect. There's going to be things sometimes where there's frustrations. Is there anything the platform till date doesn't offer that you'd like to see in the future?
So they have this one product that have been aching to get, which is pipelines, and it's an automation of, hey, you check in your code and it starts to push it down, promote it through the environments, but it's only available in their public cloud. And this is kind of, I've seen it in other clouds. Microsoft's the same way. Their DoD clouds, or their more secure clouds
Hmm.
that you should say, are behind 6 months to a year. I mean, Mendix isn't as bad. So I really want that pipeline because I'm kind of already starting to have to build it because I've been waiting long enough and they just don't tie in.
Yeah.
So that's the one come on, help me out here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Scheduled deployments, like one of the pieces from the cloud, you can't schedule a deployment. So that means I have to be there at 6 p.m. or whatever
Yeah.
time to click the button to deploy this package. So we built something that we can schedule that deployment, which is great. Their API is great so that you can tap into that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last 2 years, I'd say, the buzzword and the hottest word is AI, right? Everyone's talking about AI. Mendix has obviously got Maya, and everyone's looking at AI features. I'd like to know kind of one, your personal view on AI, and two, if you're even using it. Even Maya, for example, and is that kind of helping your day to day?
Yeah, so the just overall general AI, I was kind of like a naysayer in the beginning, like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah,
whatever voodoo stuff you want to think about.
yeah,
Yeah, I was kind of there. And then I started using like ChatGPT to do simple things. Can you give me a
yeah,
list? Help me find. I was like, wow, this thing's better than Google. I don't
yeah,
have to search
yeah,
50
yeah,
pages and maybe find a piece
yeah,
of code that I could use.
yeah,
It's still a big, one of my friends says it's still like a beginner developer, but at least it
yeah,
helps get you the pieces that you need. As far as like Maya, and one of the things they just released is this, I think the general term is vibe programming, where you're talking to a LLM or a large language model,
uh-huh,
and it's giving you some code, and you, after some, regular English conversation, it will create something for you. So they release where they'll generate domain model for you if you start to talk to it. And
yeah,
I played around with Cursor and Windsurf,
uh,
using it, and I think it's going to be a huge, they're just different ways. It's not only from the business, how do I use the AI to solve the business problem that I'm trying to do,
yeah,
as well as the developer's business problem, I should say, is how do I get this functionality to the customer
yeah,
faster? So you're going to have
yeah,
both of those kind of pushing towards each other.
yeah. And do your developers, there's this thing about there's been this conversation about, will AI replace low code, or will it even replace developers? Are you a believer? Are you on the same page as a lot of people these days, and more about AI will always be more like an assistant rather than, we don't have to worry about, someone taking our jobs.
Uh, that's a good one. I I think it will. At some point, it will take a portion of our jobs. I mean, it kind of does in a certain sense as you do your search and research and how to figure out stuff. Because that's a technique on its own when you're trying to figure out how do I solve this coding problem, and it spits out like three different options of what you can do. Uh, but it's kind of like I look at it as, okay, when the car was invented, everybody's like, oh, I can always use a horse. Yeah, you can use a horse,
Yeah,
and the horse is even more advantageous in certain areas because
yeah,
cars are really expensive at certain points if you want to go four by
yeah,
four or whatever specific use
yeah,
case you have, right? Um, so I think it's a little bit of that. You're just going to be driving around a fancy AI car. That will help
yeah,
you out. Now there's self-driving, and
yeah,
that's people like, oh, I'm scared to do that, and I'm just like, well, who knows?
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think. I mean, we'll just find some other. There's always work to do. I mean, the
yeah,
the thing about AI is it's still not a person.
yeah,
it doesn't have warmth of a person. They can try to mimic it, but it doesn't have a soul. So it's missing out on the
mhm,
whole aspects of what that means, right? It
yeah,
doesn't know love. It can kind of sort of think love, and so you just can't recreate a human in that way, in that
yeah.
there's still work for humans to be done.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And as someone who's kind of working with the team, build a team, running a Mendix project, what advice would you give to other businesses who are going through a process like you did, of building a team?
So building a team is definitely, you have to take on that the agile approach of, fail often, fail fast, so that you can adjust those things and then shore up those things that you can adjust, and think automation first. I've heard, don't think automation first, run the process, understand the process, and then automate that process. I think depending on what company, usually you don't go back to automate. It takes a
Yeah,
lot longer. So if you try to automate first, then you can fail even faster and fix those failures and adjust the process, but it's already automated in that sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this may relate to the last question. For businesses who are starting out, new, or considering low code, Mendix as a platform. You've learned a lot now since you started, from what you've learned over the years. If you were to go back and start again, what would you do differently?
Oh, I starting again, I would still, I think going back to that last question about automation first, there's some areas I would have rather had more time to say, okay, we're going to make sure this process is automated. Code reviews. There's got to be a way to look at the code, and there's some best practices. Mendix does have it. It'd be nice if it was configurable to be able to do that. But then, because as you scale, what I found that is hard is if I'm the expert and I'm the only expert, then that means I have to mentor the next guys, and that means I'm not building solutions. I'm mentoring, and so depending on how fast they can come up to speed, so you definitely want some more experts, and we actually did a good job of bringing in a contractor expert to help with that, and make sure that we had at least more than one expert in the being able to mentor and create a mentorship program that help you build up, because as you build them up, now they're building solutions. They're not going to be perfect. My solutions aren't perfect either. That's okay. At least we're getting something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm interested to know your thoughts on, obviously, the US is such a big tech market, right? But there's such a shortage of Mendix developers in the US, where obviously I know it's a European founded business, but why do you think developers, I think there's a lot more businesses adopting low code, but I think the developer level is not rising as fast as business needs. Why do you think that people are still sticking to the traditional way rather than thinking about, obviously low code takes away a lot of the things you don't want, repetitive work, right? So it helps you build faster, and the goal for any developer should be the end product, not how you're doing it. So right. What's your view on why low code is not kind of the developer pool has not grown as rapidly, in the US versus Europe?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't know that I can speak on behalf of all US. We're a very culturally diverse group. So is Europe. You have all those countries next to each other. So it's, why is that? I think probably just because it didn't start in the US, and maybe as companies like mine and others start to really adopt it and get the information out there of it existing and seeing the benefits. Usually people are, you have those early adopters, and you have this kind of, I don't remember, there's a chart I saw where you have the early adopters and they're going to be on board and they're sold out. And then it's not until there's a certain point where you have this wave of all of a sudden everybody's joining. I think we're getting close to being on that cusp. I mean, the AI, people are looking at AI. There's some, I'm not sure I want my data out there in the rest of the world, and how much am I going to share to allow that to occur? So what's just outside of that was probably low code. And so they're going to start to adopt it a lot more. And I think, these kind of sessions, podcasts, and just people seeing the benefits of it. I'm repeating myself, but seeing the benefits of not only, hey, I built this solution quickly, but the roadmap of here's how fast we were testing and using these softwares. Here's the quick MVPs. Here's the quick wins. And look, it still runs, years down. And look, we stand up this new developer. He comes in and they're looking at this old project that I built in Mendix, and guess what? They can support it. They don't have to figure out my spaghetti code because we've continued these practices. And Mendix makes that practice easy.
And do you find, obviously now you're classed as, a Mendix, you're not SharePoint anymore. You're on the Mendix side. If you're having conversations with people and they ask what you do, do you feel low code's more well known now, or like, for example, we started 7 years ago, and when we started doing low code, I still spoke to a lot of people who said, what's low code? Where now it's very much, people know. They might not know specific platforms. I think Mendix is pretty well known, especially if they don't, you can just say Siemens and then they'll work it out, fair enough, we know Siemens. But do you feel when you're, you must have your own kind of technical network of people, who, do you feel it's better known now in around the world or just in where you are?
Yeah, it's funny because I swear in where I'm at, you can't throw a rock without hitting a software engineer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
exactly.
every
Yeah.
part of that time. What do you do for a living? Oh, software engineer. I'm like, yep, okay. So yeah, I think for the people outside of just my generic technology circle in the other personal areas of my life I do run into software engineers. Low code is not such a foreign word to them, and they're interested. It's almost like when I was early on SharePoint. They're like, SharePoint, and then they ask you
Yeah,
a million questions
yeah,
because they want to see. Going back to the early parts of the conversation was they want to see someone already doing it to then
yeah.
help digest it for them, and then they
Mm,
can see, oh well, so and so did it. Oh, okay, it's not so bad. Let's try it out.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And there's still skeptical people around still today, for low code, what would be your message to the skeptics? You've kind of touched on try it out, but if you're having a conversation or with a skeptical person or you've had one in the past, what would be your kind of advice to them?
Yeah, so I think with Mendix, with my experience with Mendix, it's kind of like you're digging with a shovel for a while, and then you get something that has a little bit more power to dig. Not a full blown machine, but a shovel, and then you get Mendix, which is more like this. That big digger. I don't know what they
Yeah,
call them in Europe. Those big things. Well, it has
like a
all these levers.
bulldozer
Yeah,
style. Yeah, yeah,
bulldozer style. It has all these
yeah,
levers. You're not just gonna jump in, but as soon as you
yeah,
figure it out, now you're really moving some earth quickly. And so you just have to be patient with scaling into it. Don't just open it up and think, oh, low code's horrible because
yeah,
I can't build this thing in 2 seconds. Even the vibe coding stuff, I've seen people try, and some people say they do it in a day, and I don't know. I have a family, so I can't sit down for that many hours.
yeah.
So
Of course, yeah,
I want to know the actual working time that they
yeah,
they did
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So yeah, don't give up, and definitely find a mentor who's done it so they can help you scale faster and say you can ignore that piece. Don't get caught up in this. Oh yes, you need to pay attention to this. The mentoring piece is huge.
yeah, yeah. Great answer. And just finally, a curveball question. For you personally, if you were to build, if you had the freedom to build something yourself using the Mendix platform for yourself, what would it be?
Oh, for myself. Oh man, that is a curveball question. I didn't, I hadn't thought about that one. I see. I gave away some business ideas. I see some of these products that we do homeschooling, and I see some of
Mm,
these products that they build, and I'm like, this thing is horrible. It's really hard to
yeah,
use. I could build this better in Mendix, and I
yeah,
would totally love to build something that it's you know for your mobile, it's scheduling for the parents, and they have
yeah,
communications and things that way. And then for me, that's just scale into other kind of schooling and
yeah,
an organization like that. So I'd like to
yeah.
do something like that.
Yeah, I like that idea because it'd be useful to me as well. So I definitely use it. Amazing, amazing. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Peter. It was great to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and your insights and your views.
It's my pleasure. I really appreciate you reaching out and having me on. And again, it's really my pleasure to be able to share. And thanks for all your great questions.
And yeah, it'd be great to maybe speak again in the future, see how things have evolved and changed. And if you've built that app, then we can talk about that as well. Let's keep in touch, definitely.
I'm gonna try to do it in vibe coding. I think that's kind of
Yeah,
my
okay.
plan. I was playing around with it, trying to tap
Yeah,
into, it blew up, and I was like, I was
yeah.
done after 5 hours. Like, oh no, I'm out.
Yeah.
For now, anyways.
Yeah,
I'm
for
actually
now.
speaking at Siemens Realize Live in
Nice.
Detroit this year. So
Oh,
is it
amazing.
Detroit? Yeah. So that'll be exciting.
Great. Well, I look forward to that. And but I'm not sure. Does that get shared? It doesn't get shared online, does it?
I think it will. Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to be shared because it's already
Yeah.
pre published that
Okay.
I'm one of the speakers there.
Oh, nice. Great.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Well, appreciate it again, and let's keep in touch.
All right, we'll do. Take care.
Thanks, Peter.